In today's video, we're going to be talking about two big changes coming to Shopify, and I guess specifically Shopify payments. You guys have tuned into Rules for Rebels. Thanks for tuning in, guys. What's happening YouTube? So Shopify, aka Shopify Payments, sent out an email to users notifying us of two big changes. The two big changes, we'll just get them out of the way right off the bat. There is going to be a cross-border or international fee of 1% for Shopify payments or payments from your customers that originate from outside of the U.S. So if you guys only sell in the U.S., you'll be unaffected by that part. However, if you do sell outside of the U.S., if you do sell internationally, any international payments will incur a 1% additional payment processing fee. And this isn't like hugely groundbreaking. A lot of merchant processors have this fee. PayPal has traditionally charged this fee. So Shopify is just kind of getting in line with what other merchants are doing. The other part about this is Shopify will no longer be refunding or when you issue a refund, Shopify will no longer be giving you back the Shopify fees. So that 2.9% plus 30 cents per transaction, if you refund a payment, let's say somebody pays you $100, Shopify is not going to give you that, what would that be, $2 to $3.20 refund back that you paid in fees. So this will most likely affect like the apparel industry the most, since they tend to have the highest refunds. But that's basically the two big changes. Let's kind of read the email here and kind of get into this. We'll talk about what this means for your store. And then also I wanted to talk a little bit about what this overall means for like using Shopify, or not just Shopify, BigCommerce, really any, I don't know if you want to call it cloud-based or SaaS type service for your store. You know, typically in the past, there was more of an ownership model of e-commerce. You know, I'm going to build my own website. I'm going to build my own, you know, WordPress WooCommerce website, and it's going to be mine, and I'm going to own it, and I'm going to have pretty much complete control over it. And really, e-commerce as a whole has shifted from an ownership model to a renting model, essentially. And that's what Shopify is, right? You rent your store from Shopify. You don't really own it. So here's what the email reads, and I actually plucked this one off of Reddit. I actually hadn't noticed this email in my inbox yet. But the email goes on to say, "Dear Brandon," I'm not Brandon, but again, some guy in Reddit posted this. "We are making changes that will go into effect after March 1st, 2020, including a change to our current Shopify payments terms of service. The upcoming changes are twofold. As a result of rising costs passed on to us from payment networks, Shopify Payments will be charging a cross-border fee of 1% for payments transactions that originate from outside the U.S. And second, we also discovered a mistake we made with your account. When you process a refund, we have been paying you back your original Shopify payments fee, despite our terms of service saying this won't happen. We won't be asking for any money back, and unlike many payment processors, we won't charge an additional fee to process a refund. I would say not very many processors do that. However, after March 1st, 2020, we will no longer return this fee. Again, this is consistent with our existing Shopify payments terms of service that you agreed to already. For more information on getting paid with Shopify Payments, please visit our help center. If you have any other questions about these changes, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. Thanks, Shopify." So changes are pretty straightforward, right? Like cross-border transactions going to be 1% extra, kind of in line with PayPal and most other merchant processors. And the second part, to be honest, this is actually also in line with PayPal and what a lot of other merchant processors do. When you issue a refund, they're not going to give you back the processing fees because they, you know, I guess incurred those fees from their parent bank. A lot of people are kind of up in arms about this. PayPal instituted this a while back. And really most like real merchant processors, major merchant processors already had this policy in place. It is what it is. Who this is especially going to hurt is people who have high ticket items, high dollar amount items. You know, if you sell an item that costs $1,000, say a 3% fee is going to be a $30 fee. So if somebody buys something for you for $1,000, they wind up requesting a refund and you refund it, you're going to get $970 back. So it's going to cost you essentially $30 to process a refund. Kind of sucks. It is what it is. This is also going to affect really any industry that experiences higher than average returns. I mean, if you buy a phone case, most of the time people aren't going to return a phone case. But things like shoes, clothing, apparel, because people don't always like what they look like in something because different clothing items fit differently. This is going to affect the apparel industry a lot more than others. I've heard that the apparel industry on average has upwards of a 30% return rate. I think that's a little bit high. I don't think most apparel stores do experience return rates that high. But it is definitely going to be higher than most other stores selling video games or phone cases or whatever else. So something to keep in mind. I don't know if you want to increase your pricing a little bit to accommodate for this. Another thing you can do is you could just make sure that there's as little reason as possible for somebody to issue a return. For somebody to want to return. So, with apparel, again, you can spell out all day long, the sleeves are this long, the chest is this wide, this is a size medium. You can spell it out as much as you want, and yeah, you're still going to experience some returns, but try to describe your item as in-depth and accurately as possible, and hopefully you can alleviate as many of these returns as possible. Another thing that I did for a short period of time, I put it in my return policy, though I rarely ever actually enforced it, was charging a restocking fee. Most merchant processors, it is allowed within their terms of service to charge a restocking fee if you're upfront about it. Could be anywhere from 10%, 15%, 20%. I've even seen some companies charge as high as 30% restocking fees. I noticed Best Buy started doing this a while back. I bought a Sony SL2 DSLR camera, and this is probably a year or two back, but when I was buying the camera, they informed me, like, look, if you return this, there is going to be a 30% restocking fee. I think that's something new they started doing, and I think it's partly in response to a lot of these like tech bloggers and vloggers and YouTubers who would buy something, try it out, review the tech, and then wind up returning it to the store. And obviously the store winds up with an open box item that they now have to sell at a discounted price. So they've just started, okay, you want to return stuff, you can return whatever you want, but there's going to be a 30% restocking fee. With my store, I started doing a 20% restocking fee. Just due to the nature of my items, people would buy them, use them, or keep them for a certain amount of time and then return them. And I had this written into my return policy just to be kind of a deterrent and to prevent abusive returns. Rarely ever did I actually enforce it. When people wanted returns, I would 99% of the time issue them a full refund. But it was something that was nice to be able to fall back on if people were abusing returns. And I think to some extent it kind of deterred returns a little bit. And then what does this mean for using Shopify as a whole? This is kind of something that I'm kind of surprised wasn't in place in the first place. So I don't know that this is a great issue for this, but I was at an event called LPX Chicago back in August or September. And LPX Chicago was an event put on by Google and Google Partners. And one of the speeches that I sat through, or keynotes or whatever you want to call it, was all about how I guess you could say e-commerce industry, how the e-commerce industry has moved from an ownership model to a subscription-based or a renting model. And in the past, companies would build out their own websites. At one point, I had a custom-built website. It was built on the WordPress platform with WooCommerce. And the nice thing about that is I owned everything. I controlled everything. Now, there's definitely benefits to using Shopify. Shopify makes it super fast and easy to set up a well-functioning, streamlined, nice-looking store. It's secure. Anything you want to add to the site isn't custom coding. You just download an app. And it just makes e-commerce very user-friendly for people who aren't coders, programmers, web designers. However, you also kind of give up some control. And this keynote was actually put on by a woman from BigCommerce. So, it's in her best interest to promote BigCommerce and I guess kind of cloud-based e-commerce platforms. But one thing that this kind of stirred up in my mind was anytime you give up control to a third party, bad things can kind of start happening. And what I kind of worried about was, and I don't think this is going to happen. I don't necessarily think this is going to happen overnight, but it is a possibility. What if Shopify tomorrow said, okay, we're going to raise our $29 plan, the basic Shopify plan, up to $99? What would you do at that point? Would it still be worth it to operate your store? would that make you think about switching platforms? We all know what a huge headache it is to switch platforms or redesign a website. There's going to be huge impacts on your site's SEO. It's a huge time suck. It's costly. The larger your product catalog, the more established your site, the more blog posts you have, the more content there is to move over, the more redirects there are to do on your site. It's just like a huge headache. And when people start moving over to SaaS platforms, or even just building their e-commerce stores on something like a Shopify or a BigCommerce, you're building your business on one platform. And if that platform starts raising fees or instituting policies that you don't like or don't agree with or don't want to put up with, there's a pretty big deterrent to switching platforms and going off to your own managed site. So I just think that's one kind of important thing to keep in mind if you are going to build your, not only Shopify site, same thing goes for blogs. You know, years ago, whenever people would say, I want to start a blog, should I do it on WordPress or Blogger? Everyone would always say, WordPress is so much better. Now, WordPress is better than Blogger in a lot of ways. It's much more advanced of a tool, but the one thing everyone would fall back on was with Blogger, and when I say Blogger, I'm talking about Google Blogger.blogspot. With Blogger, you don't own your blog, right? If Google, for some reason, disagreed with something you blogged about or wanted to take your site down or close down this service, you're now scrambling to download or export all these blog posts to then move over to WordPress. So a lot of people in the past didn't really like the idea that you don't own your content, you don't own your platform. And so it's just kind of interesting to me that in blogging, that was always kind of a big thing, like own your platform, own your content. And now that things have switched over to WooCommerce, or to more of a renting model, as opposed to an ownership model, nobody really thinks twice about it or has a problem with building their business on Shopify because it's nice and quick and easy and streamlined. There's a lot of guides out there. But that is one thing to keep in mind, is when you do something on Shopify, you don't own your website. Shopify does. So like I said, this is kind of a normal change. This is kind of in line with what the rest of the industry is doing. So really no huge surprises here, but it just got me thinking, what if Shopify started raising fees or instituting other policies that you disagreed with? At what point would you be willing to jump ship and move over to a different platform? And that's just some kind of food for thought, something to think about. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If so, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button below. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll catch you on the next video.